But first was to kind of create a climate of confidence in the team that the new leader is here to work with you. And when you walk into the doors of your school or workplace, don't leave any part of your identity outside. Bring in your whole self.
All right, welcome everybody to the next episode of the Learn It podcast. I couldn't be more excited to be hosting Rashmi Swarup today. So thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for spending some time with us.
Thank you, Dheeraj. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Yeah, of course. And so we're going to start with the first question, which is always consistent amongst all the other guests that we've had the pleasure of having on the show, which is a little bit about your childhood. Because I've always found that our childhood experiences are very interesting to see how they shape us to where we are today. So can you take us back to your childhood, Rashmi? How would your parents, your teachers have described you? What were you like as a child?
I grew up in a very warm and comforting home with my parents who were always making sure that I grew up with good values. So for them, it was very important that I demonstrated good character all the time. But at the same time, I think they would say I was a very avid reader, getting into their bookshelves and reading, picking out books. And sometimes they'll say, you're too young to read this one, and so on. So I grew up reading books like Sherlock Holmes, P.G. Wodehouse at that time. But also, I think they would say that I was fond of gardening and being out in nature. And as an outdoor person, a little bit of an athlete as well, participating in a lot of competitions. And my parents would come out when I was participating in some track race or so. And afterwards, they'd always give me some good observation and tips. And as far as my teachers are concerned, I think they would say I was the quiet, obedient student in the class. And always interested in learning, but also having an adventurous streak in asking questions that would sometimes make them wonder and then reflect and respond.
Yeah. Is there a particular book that you fondly remember reading as a child?
Oh my goodness. I loved Daphne du Maurier's The Frenchman's Creek.
Okay.
Yes.
That's a book you'd recommend to folks to read?
It was a novel, but it was just the way it was written and a bit of mystery and so on to it. It was beautiful.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that.
Yes.
And, Rashmi, your journey has spanned so many leadership roles across countries. And so I'm curious to know, are there any specific moments in your career that have particularly shaped your leadership style, your approach to education? I'd love for you to share a little bit about that.
So as you know that I grew up in India, then went to school there, worked there, then went to the Middle East, then came to Canada, but also I've traveled across the world. So I find that in education, the diversity of the communities we serve is so important to know who they are. And I feel my experiences working in diverse communities have made me see the assets they bring and the importance of understanding who they are and what matters to them so that we can serve those families and the children well. Was a big, for me, an experience that really has helped me throughout my career. The other piece I feel is that, again, moving from place to place, what's the context? So knowing the context of who you serve and adapting your leadership. Rather than expecting that you go in as a leader, this is who I am, and now you adapt to me. It was important always to see who you're serving and what their needs are. And then lastly, for me, student voice has been very important. And by that, I mean always connecting with students, asking them what they would like and what do they see is good for them. And as a TED-Ed innovative educator, I had the privilege of connecting with educators across the world and learning how they engage with students. So like starting a club for like TED education, kind of learning how to be public speakers for students, encouraging them in every way possible, and also learning from them.
Yeah. Is there a particular thing that surprised you when you had to, take on this role and you were first taking on this role? Anything that was really different that you had to adapt to your point of being a good leader means adapting to your environment and not necessarily always expecting others to just, adapt to you. So was there anything about this role that you see today that was a little bit of an adaptation that you had to fulfill?
So I came in at a time where there were a lot of changes in the board. And so there was a feeling of uncertainty, which I felt that they didn't know whether this new director will be here for how long or not,
Yeah.
and what is to be expected. So I had to adapt to the fact that before getting to any work, I have to be out there, be visible, and also to let them know that I'm here and give them that confidence and calm that together we will come on a stable trajectory again, because there had been a lot of changes.
Yeah.
So my adaptability was not that let's look at what's the instruction, what are the policies, what is happening. That was important. But first was to kind of create a climate of confidence in the team that the new leader is here to work with you.
Yeah. And that's the thing about change that we notice, right? Is that we always jump to what's next or like what do we need to work on? But the foundation of being able to adapt to anything that changes
Yes.
is having the belief, having the confidence, having the comfort to know that these are the people that I'm going to work with. And sometimes we forget that and we just we go straight to let's change, and let's make
exactly.
this change.
You said it.
Yeah. And when you think about the role today and just diving deeper into that, what do you feel energizes you about this role? You wake up every morning, you get excited. What are some of those elements that really energize and motivate you to continue to drive innovation at Peel?
That's a big question, but I think, as I mentioned earlier, visiting people in schools, student staff, and families is important. And when you visit and see different geographical, areas and different sizes of schools, you're observing things. But then certain things happen that make you think deeper. So in one school, I had a parent with a little kindergarten, girl in her arms, and you were talking to the parents. So I just put out my arms, and the kid came to me, a stranger, and that picture with that child is so powerful. And I said, "Oh my gosh, look at the trust and confidence this child has placed in me. So what is my responsibility as a leader? That what I'm going to do for her future? Because the kindergarten class today is going to be the graduating class of 2039.
Yeah, wow.
So that is something that we need to think about, preparing students for that time. So how are we going to reimagine education so that we can prepare them for a changing world and create opportunities for students to experience the world in a different way in the classrooms and outside, as well as for our teachers, creating those resources and learning that they, along with the students, are traveling that journey into changing the way we do things. So that is what keeps me excited.
Yeah, and I think every time I speak to you, I can always sense your energy and your love towards students, and that being a significant factor and driving factor towards a lot of the work that you do here as well. A bit of a unique question, but do you sometimes miss being close to the students every day, day in, day out? Do you miss that sometimes?
All the time. Because, when you're in a school, you know the name of every child, every staff member. And now when you go, you're almost like, a visitor. You don't know the names. And when you leave, you know some names. And then again, after some time, because you're meeting so many people, that personal connection is something as an educator, which is the best part of education.
Yeah.
But then you know that your sphere of influence is much bigger. And so that helps you understand that, okay, you can't have that personal connection at that level, but you can have that bigger sphere of influence, but also connect with different groups, communities, parents, staff, and students.
Right. It's a different, different level of impact as well, right? That you might not be directly interacting, but whatever work you do, the effort that you put in, they're the receivers of that. They're the ones that receive it. Absolutely. And Peel as a region, it's very celebrated to your point around diversity and having a lot of different cultures in our school, at the schools, and even beyond that. I'm curious to know if you could share a couple of, initiatives or things that are really meaningful and close to you that the school board has done, to encourage that diversity, that diverse thought process of thinking as well.
Peel is indeed very, very diverse community, and we are actually the second largest board in Canada, as well as we have 262 schools. And my research department informed me we have students that come to us from 186 countries.
Oh, wow.
And speaking 121 languages. Wow. And so how do we leverage that diversity is important. So each year we have an event in August called Starting Point, in which I address the system for the year ahead with a theme. But one of the things that I say year to year is your identity is important. And when you walk into the doors of your school or workplace, don't leave any part of your identity outside. Bring in your whole self. So with that message, but how do we actually implement it through our policies, procedures, programs? So I'll speak to one program, and that is about 2 years ago we opened our Indigenous Center. Its name is Monji Ding Wingushkeng, and it is meant to kind of connections with the elders, with the treaty partners, with our Indigenous team and Indigenous community members to create a place for our Indigenous students and families to come together. And again, not only the Indigenous students, but others who are gaining Indigenous knowledge and more. So we didn't know how it'll take off, but the difference has been immense. So we had 300 students who had self-identified as Indigenous earlier, but after the center opened, within less than 2 years, we now have, it has tripled to 942 students who have identified themselves, and more will come. But at the same time, it's the education, integrating it into the curriculum with students coming from schools to visit the center and learn. So it is about coming together and making a difference. So to me, this is one example I wanted to share.
Yeah. And no, I absolutely love that, because it also shows, this idea around not only understanding people's cultures, but embracing it. And I think sometimes initiatives like this give people an opportunity to learn and embrace different cultures, because without that, it becomes challenging for people to say, okay, I want to understand and I want to embrace it, but I don't have the level of depth or the opportunity to do so. So it's always lovely to hear. And I'm sure there's a lot more.
There's much more
to come,
yes,
more to come
yes,
as well,
yes,
right? But
indeed.
that's a very good example as well. I love that. And I want to sort of shift gears a little bit more and think, because you have so much experience in education. So I'm selfishly going to pick your brain so that everybody can learn from you as well. But is there one misconception about education that you feel a lot of people have? And would you want to change that? And how would you change that misconception if you were to?
You're really picking my brain on this one. So when I think about a misconception, I want to say in public education, we are all about service to students, staff, communities, and families. But it is about education, but also well-being, emotional, mental, as well as nutrition, and many, many more things we try. But as far as I'm concerned, I feel that we are not the one-stop shop for everything in education and public education. Our educators are so caring and compassionate. They want to be. We also have staff that is dedicated to, different aspects of a child's holistic well-being. So example, mental health strategy and so on. But we don't have that specialist level of expertise to address situations which could be more complex, as well as the resources to have more opportunities to serve students in every way. We always try, but the world around us is complex, and the complexity comes into the schools, and we want to give our best. But what we are realizing is that we need more collaborative partnerships, which we do have, but are they adequate? Because that's where the expertise is, where we can truly support some students who are in more needs than others. So from that angle, I feel that when families come to us with so much hope, and at times you're not able to provide what they're looking for, along with the learning and well-being and beyond. So we try our best, but my hope is that there'll be more opportunities for coming together outside the education sector, for people to come together to serve the children and community.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think it's very interesting, because every parent also has a different perception and perspective towards what the value of the education is, or what the role of the school is in the child. And to your point, a child spends majority of their time at school, right? A big part of their life at school. So it's not just about education. There's so many of these different spheres that you're talking about that would naturally have an impact on them because of the amount of time they're spending there. I think that is very, very wise as well, to be able to have that perception. And when you think about partners and growing those strategic partnerships to be able to serve the community in the way that they're looking to get growth in, are there specific areas that you want to double down on? And this is an area where we need more community partners. Is there specific areas like that?
There's several, but I think mental health is big. I would say special education is big. Even I would, from an angle of food insecurity.
Mm.
A few months ago, we had all the different agencies come together to talk about, how do we support the system, the region. And again, they also are depending on funding. So there is willingness, but again, everybody is,
Factors, yeah.
there are different factors coming into play.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I was taking some time also before this podcast to revisit the Peel School Board's multi-year strategic plan, and I was looking through all these really cool initiatives, really cool goals, these really cool objectives. There's one question that I put over here because one of the really interesting goals to me, which you've spoken about a little bit, was improving equity, inclusion, and student achievement. And those are three, of course, different areas: equity, inclusion, student achievement. We spoke already a little bit about equity, inclusion, diversity, and the importance and some of the initiatives there. I want to talk a little bit about student achievement and double click on that. Can you share a little bit about what that means to Peel? And are there any specific areas of student achievement that you're focusing more on versus less on? Is this, more of an academic lens, a non-academic lens, and any interesting initiatives that you're willing to share towards that effort?
Yeah, we are very excited. We have our multi-year strategic plan. It's our first year because it's a cohesive plan that brings us all
Unites.
together with a specific focus, right? So again, if I were to focus on the one goal of achievement, but if the purpose of the plan as defined by the Board of Trustees is to promote student success through inclusion, innovation, and empowerment. So if you think of innovation and empowerment, as you mentioned, I've spoken about inclusion, which is foundational to everything we do. I'd like to speak to a few things. One is, I think the foundational reading skills are very important. So we definitely are working with our kindergarten to grade 2 on reading strategies through whether it's a reading screener to do an assessment first, the pre-assessment, which we had, I cannot recall the exact number, how many teachers trained, and then they assessed 30,000 students. And right now in March, we are looking at how they're doing now compared to that assessment. So that helps to see have they grown, improved in their reading skills or not. That is critical. We have a math strategy. And so we are kind of rolling it out to make sure that our students are doing well in maths. And EQA is often a way to determine how our students are doing because that's what the community sees. And so that also is a pilot for students to be trying out with their teachers to engage in a EQA pilot before they write the test because the practice helps. So that, but also I can share with you that learning is not necessarily only limited to the classroom with the curriculum.
Absolutely.
So what we started is what we call a LEAP projects, LEIP. So leading education innovation projects.
Okay.
And the idea was that schools could apply for the projects to the system. And they were projects which were about, inquiry-based learning and expand, span a large field, whether it was community gardens, STEM, coding, robotics, apps development, much more. So the first year we had about 46 schools apply, but then at the end of the year when you did kind of a conference where they came and showcased everything, this last year we had 220 schools.
Oh, wow.
So again, it's about student voice, their ability to showcase themselves even through digital storytelling about their identities, but learning, whether it's literacy, numeracy, that has really engaged students and staff. And then last thing I do want to say is that you cannot have students doing well without staff learning.
Right.
So in Peel, we have created 22 additional qualification courses, AQ courses, which are OCT accredited, which means that we can deliver the courses here for our teachers to learn. And we have rolled out 20 of the courses that include, mathematics, teaching English language learners, and other subjects like that. So again, supporting staff learning is important for students to do well.
Yeah, and it's one of those notions that, we take from, you look at any successful company today, it doesn't even have to be in education. You look at any technology company, any company in any industry, and a significant part of their success is derived from upskilling the people that are within the teams, right? Within the companies. And so I think that people always undervalue that because it seems like the last thing that we need to do. But actually, a lot of the outcomes to that are derived in intangible ways that we can't necessarily see. But when we educate and when we do sessions or when you run sessions, I assume your teachers take something, experiment more.
Yes.
They become more open to trying new things, and that might encourage them to do different things, and that's what elevates that learning experience for the child.
Exactly.
Yeah. And is there, I'm going to ask you from the perspective of a teacher, because I know you have a lot of experience being a teacher as well. And, some teachers I've spoken to also get overwhelmed. Like there's a lot of stuff going on, and then we want them to learn this and learn that. You have been a teacher. I'm sure you know what they're going through. What advice would you give a teacher trying to upskill themselves, but also trying to find a balance in order to, have a good life and maintain a good balance?
I think that applies to all of us in
Yeah.
whatever role we are these days. That's the nature of the world we live in.
Hmm.
How do we have that balance? And definitely a teacher, the workload is immense and they want to do, more for every child in their class. That is what we believe in and that's what they want to do. So it's thinking about each child, communicating with the family, doing the work in the class, creating lessons, engaging classrooms and so on. At the same time, learning.
Yeah.
So to your point, I think it's about setting aside a little time every week would be a strategy they could have. They do it at staff meetings at times. And I do say that make sure you have a balanced life in which you have time for yourself because your well-being is important. So sometimes I have asked that question and sometimes they will say that, going for a walk is important. I try to do that.
Yeah.
So on the walk, they say we can do our learning using a podcast. So things like that. So to each their own, whatever ways they like to learn, but keeping the balance is important.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think it's the small things that, each person can do, whether it's blocking out time in their calendar
Exactly.
or taking a walk when you can take it during a meeting, if you can walk and talk, those sort of small actions. I know that, teachers and education is one of those industries that I think is passion driven. We're an extremely passion driven industry where everybody that's in education absolutely loves it. And so we want to put more. We care about every student. We have this sort of emotional connection to some extent towards the classroom, I feel. Even after I could spend a day with kids and I feel like I don't want to leave, right? There's that connection that you've shaped with them. And so I always remember, because I started teaching when I was 12, and I still remember the first small group of kids I had taught, and I still remember them so fondly, and it was just for a day. But that, if I see them again, I would feel that same level of excitement. And so sometimes in a passion-driven industry, we get consumed by the passion. So to your point, finding those pockets of time where you can balance things out a little bit to refill and your battery and your energy, as I like to say.
So essential.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the big focuses for Peel District School Board as well is real world learning, right? Learning outside of the classroom and getting into experiences that help kids learn beyond just what's in the specific classroom. Could you share a bit about, how that's being achieved or anything that you're really excited about looking forward in that aspect?
So in today's world, learning is not limited to classrooms alone. It can happen anywhere. And we are big into creating opportunities for our students to learn through real life experiences. And for that, a strategy in Peel that we have embarked upon is partnerships. So again, our partners are such who are able to provide experiences for students in different ways.
Right.
So what we are looking at is, the future of learning.
Yeah.
Future of work, future of healthcare. So if you think about future of learning, we have partnered with, right now I can say 3 universities.
Very nice.
So University of Toronto, Mississauga, where it's dedicated to, again, looking at our data, who are the students who we need to kind of give them those opportunities. So it's dedicated to Black students who earn co-op credits along with university credits. And when you talk to them and their parents, those opportunities are exciting. And we've had a few cohorts and some of the students are going to university.
Wow.
And then we have a partnership with Algoma University, the Brampton campus.
Nice.
Where actually it's like a school within the university. Because our teachers are there to teach. So the kids spend the whole day there.
They can experience
one whole semester.
Right.
And along with that, they also do a couple of certifications. And the university credits are transferable.
Oh, wow.
So that is really, really taken off.
Yeah.
And then we have our partnership, as I said, Future of Healthcare, which is TMU's School of Medicine, which is opening this September in Brampton.
Oh, how exciting.
And so with that, we partnered with them to start doing series of workshops, bringing experts in
Mhm.
to talk to students about the different healthcare professions that are existing
Okay.
and creating that opportunity that any of you can be in those. So those are some of the partnerships that I can mention to you in that area.
Mhm.
But also think about the skilled trades.
Mm.
So the research tells us that in about I think by 2028, 700,000 skilled trade workers would have retired.
Yeah.
So how are we going to replenish
Fulfill
that
that
gap,
shortage.
right?
Yeah.
As well as very few girls are in skilled trades.
Mm.
So we have schools that have skilled trades, but we have one school we offer 17 skilled trades.
Oh, wow.
And we partner in that with the Skills Council of Canada.
Mm.
And that has also really opened a lot of opportunities. And especially we are seeing a year-over-year increase in girls enrolling in skilled trades as well.
Yeah.
So that is also very, very exciting.
They also get inspiration, right, from
They
their
do,
friends,
they
right?
do,
Because
they
all the
do.
time you just need a few girls to do it. And you think, okay, I can also do it, right? They feel more excited to
Yeah,
embark on that journey as well.
absolutely.
And I agree with you. I mean, it's definitely something that worries a lot of people in terms of the shortage. And I think the schools play such an important role in being able to fulfill that shortage from kids at an early age. For those that are interested in that career, giving them the opportunity to learn and pursue that field in a much more easier way than making their life difficult to pursue that
Yes,
career.
and it opens the door of opportunities for students at this age. We don't want them to graduate from school with
Mhm.
just a diploma, but
Correct.
by knowing what their talents and skills that they are interested in through these opportunities really helps them know where they're heading for. Otherwise, sometimes, they don't know where to go.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And sort of moving on over here, I would love to sort of understand from your perspective if there was a certain, like, I love hearing stories, especially from you. So is there any specific story or moment that you fondly remember from your interaction with a student or a teacher when you were visiting one of the schools more recently?
So many.
Yeah.
It's always wonderful to connect, right, with the schools. But talking about partnerships, so I'll take some example from there. So I was telling you that we had these sessions for the TMU School of Medicine.
Hmm.
So we had, health professionals speaking. And so the 17-year-old girl kind of told me that she wants to be a pediatrician, but having heard and having attended, now she's more determined to fulfill her passion.
Huh.
So just knowing that, I could do this or that, but this is the field of medicine.
Hmm.
And so it's so amazing for them to explore the opportunities in a particular field that, okay, pediatrician, what do you need to do to get there? But at the same time, we also partner with, different organizations. So one is Grow with Google. So we got data analytics certifications for our students. So we had 200 students participate.
Wow.
And I believe about 60 plus percentage were successful in getting a certification, which in the industry, the rate of getting it is like 17%.
Oh, wow.
So now this, motivates, inspires kids. So one student then went off to university last year and came back this year and said how that certification helped him. Because right now he is going to be a software engineer intern
Oh,
in a
wow.
big organization. So every little change that you make, every student story you hear makes a difference.
Yeah. And sometimes, seeking those things gives you a lot of energy, motivation to say,
Absolutely.
continue to push and do this more and more and more. I love that. I'm going to shift gears here into a rapid fire round. So it's my
Okay.
favorite round because it's a really interesting question. So I'll give you a question and then you can give me a response in under a minute. Sound good?
Okay.
Okay. First question. What is one book or resource you recommend to education leaders?
One book that comes to mind is called The Originals, written by Adam Grant.
Mhm.
And I think it has a subtitle which says How Nonconformists Are Changing the World. So to me, it is about when you read that, yes, every time, there are rules, there's status quo, this is how you do things. But the world gets changed when people are full of ideas, they can take risks, and they can make changes. And so it kind of encourages people to think of life differently and beyond. You have this, but how can you take it to the next level and do it differently? So I think given the world where we are as educators, it's so important that we move with our kids everywhere to the next step. So I really that book is a favorite of mine.
Okay, I'll add it to my list. Okay, next question. What is one part of your daily routine that you can't skip?
Every day when the day ends and I go home,
Mhm.
I need my cup of chai
Mhm.
with my homemade masala. And then I just sit down in my home office and relax and just think about the day, and I reflect on how the day went.
Mm.
Did I accomplish what I wanted, or am I moving towards my goals that I've set for the year? And then I have a whiteboard at home and I have my to-dos and I look at them, and they're never ending, right?
Yeah.
But you kind of figure out, okay, what were your priorities and where were you? So I kind of wrap my head around that. And then because then I need to disconnect.
Mm.
And after I have my last sip of tea and I say, now disconnect, do something else so that you can start afresh the next day.
Yeah. I'm going to ask a little bit of a personal question to help myself also selfishly. How do you sometimes deal with difficult days? Because everybody has challenging days. Everybody has days where they had a difficult meeting or something did not go as planned. How do you navigate that as a leader?
I share that with senior team very often, that when you have a difficult day, it kind of brings your energy down.
Mm-hmm.
And you keep wondering, could I have done something differently to not create this
Yeah.
situation? But sometimes situations come to you, you can't help them, and you do your best, and yet the outcome may not be the best.
Mm-hmm.
I tell the senior team, and so that's how I deal with it, that when the days when you are not feeling, the
100%.
best, think of all the good things.
Mm.
And I always say that think of that little child's smile, think of that visit to the school, think of when the kid got, a high grade and they came running to you, and think why you are here. And that is the 95 to 99% of our work.
Yeah.
But it's the problem solving. And then when the problem doesn't solve in the way you wanted, that pulls you down. Just remember that was one problem, but look at all the good stuff.
Yeah, and I have this sort of in my Outlook in my emails, I have this folder I created that just says good stuff. So I just put, anytime something really good happens or I have a moment that I just really want to remember. If I'm having a tough day, sometimes I'll go to that inbox and just take a look and be like, oh yeah, this was really nice, and it sort of uplifts you again, right?
Yes, it does.
I love that. Okay. Next question. What was your favorite subject in school when you were a student?
I liked all subjects, but the subject that ignited my passion was English.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know what, the books you read, the articles, the discussions you had, took you across the world.
Yeah.
So from sitting where you are, you could explore the whole world, and you could learn about different cultures, different countries, different stories, and just imagine that, okay, this world is so big, I'm here, but I know what's happening there. What is the kind of, situation in a particular novel and things like that, or even historically. So to me, it opened the window to the world, and I just loved that imagination of what's happening, to the extent that when I had the opportunity to visit UK for the first time long ago, I wanted to go to the Lake District to see where, Wordsworth, where's the couch where he wrote the daffodils.
Oh wow.
And then you could actually see the daffodils feel, and
that's
just
magical.
The excitement.
Yeah.
It's magical.
And that's why you're so well spoken. It explains it because I feel like when you're a child and you spend so much time reading, it also makes you a better speaker. It makes you a better writer. And sometimes, I have, some students that I've spoken to that say they're struggling with English. I say, just try and read a little bit, right? Because you don't try and focus on the exercise or the homework, right? If you read like an article and you just try and understand it, and you read a book, and naturally you would see that the more you do that, you tend to become better
True.
in your spoken and written English as well. I love that. If you could implement one change across the entire education system overnight, what would it be?
Overnight.
Overnight. Tomorrow it's there. Yeah.
Perfect. Overnight, I would have every day one period in the day where the student teaches the class.
Oh, I love
not
that.
the teacher.
Yeah.
Because all the time as adults, we are going to the kids. How do you do this?
Yeah.
I'm having problem with my
phone.
this, and they know the answers,
Yeah.
but they also know more about where the world is moving than we do. But I really feel that we would all benefit if they could teach one period a day.
Yeah, and they would learn better, right?
Yes,
Because
they
at
would
that
learn.
point, their learning is at the highest level possible. Absolutely. Okay. If you could swap jobs with anyone for one day, who would you do it with and why?
I would do it with interior designer
Oh, okay.
because that's something that I enjoy doing,
Mm.
looking at spaces and seeing how they can be more aesthetic or suiting to the people who live there. And half the time I'm imagining things when I'm walking into
Like, this
buildings
would
and
look nice
spaces.
there. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that would be fun
Yeah.
for me.
Maybe it would be interesting to have the interior designer also be the director one day, and then they
Yes.
would redesign the so many different things. A little bit of a swap over
There you go.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, last question on the rapid fire. What is the best advice you've ever given or received?
So when I came to Canada as an immigrant, I was leaving, and my father wrote me a letter. And when I read that letter, he says, "Yeah, you're going to start a new life in a new country. And I would like you to make sure that you learn what is the good in that country, what are the values there, and integrate them without forgetting the values you inherited here with us." And those words were so powerful. They've been my touchstone.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best advice I ever got.
Yeah, I love that. It's always hard to leave home. It's never easy.
Yes,
And
yes.
I feel like when you know that you have family, friends supporting you and with you, that journey becomes a lot easier for someone to take.
Indeed.
Yeah, I love that. All right, well, that's the last question on the rapid fire. I'm now going to do what we call the final question,
Okay.
where we have a question from a previous guest that is left for you, and then you would leave a question for our next guest as well. So I'm going to grab my handy notebook here to see what question we have in store today, and I'll tell you who it's from as well, just so
Okay.
you're aware. Okay. Let's see what we have in store. It's always interesting to see the different questions. Some people ask more fun questions. Some people ask more serious questions. Okay. So we've got a question from Director John DeFaveri, who is the Director of Education at York Catholic District School Board. And his question is, if you could change one thing about the role, what would it be?
I would want to say that the role be not centered in the board office main building, and the director have the ability to have offices in different areas of the board where they can take turns and spend time so that local communities, families, staff, and students can drop by at the end of the day.
I love that. I had a feeling you'd say something to do with being more time with people and more time with students. So I had a feeling that was coming. Okay, love that answer. So I'm going to get you to leave a question for our next guest over here. So whoever the next guest is, good luck. You could choose to have it be a fun one, a serious one, whatever you feel like you'd want to ask someone. Okay, lovely. Well, good luck to the next guest to answer whatever question Rashmi has added. But Rashmi, this was so wonderful. Thank you so much for spending the time with us, for, being able to share these really deep insights, being able to share advice, being able to reflect on your journey as well. And I think, I couldn't be more excited to have the pleasure and privilege of speaking with you. So thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, Dheeraj. I really enjoyed, though there were some tough questions, I'll say.
Yeah, it's okay. We like to keep it a little bit tough sometimes.